How does a Norwegian family walk into a freezing room and feel genuinely warm in under 2 minutes? No thermostat cranked up, no electric heater dragged out of a cupboard. Meanwhile, you've tried everything. You've stood in front of a portable radiator for 20 minutes. You've layered on extra jumpers. You've pressed your hands against a warm mug until the mug went cold. The room still feels like a refrigerator. The villain here isn't the cold. It's your dependence on slow, expensive, whole-room heating systems that were never designed for speed. Sven Halvorsen sits in his study in Bergen, a single candle burning, wool draped over every surface, the window glass fogged with cold on the outside, and the room is warm, genuinely warm. 6 methods. Each one faster and cheaper than anything you've tried. And there's one unifying Nordic principle underneath all of them that will completely reframe how you think about warming a space. But first, you need to understand what Nordic families figured out centuries ago, that modern heating design forgot entirely. The principle sounds almost too simple when you first hear it. Nordic families do not try to heat the whole room at once. They never have. They pick one zone, a chair, a corner, a 2-meter radius, and they flood that zone with warmth first. The rest of the room can catch up later. That single shift in thinking is what separates a room that feels warm in 2 minutes from one that takes 20. The science behind it is straightforward. A focused heat zone of roughly 2 to 3 square meters can register a measurable 3 to 5 degrees Celsius rise within 2 minutes of applying any of the methods covered here. A whole room central heating system, by comparison, typically takes 20 minutes or more to move the needle on ambient temperature. You're not being impatient. The system is genuinely that slow. The cultural root goes back centuries. The Danish and Swedish concept of hygge heat retention isn't a marketing term invented for lifestyle magazines. It describes a real, centuries-old philosophy of using natural materials, wool, hide, wood, stone, to hold and reflect warmth close to the human body. The room is not the target. The person in the room is the target. Swedish heating consultant Ingrid Bergström has documented this principle extensively in her work on Nordic domestic energy efficiency. Norwegian architect Erik Holm references the same logic when describing traditional farmhouse design. Rooms were small, materials were dense, and heat was always concentrated before it was distributed. Every method in this breakdown is a different tool for building that focused zone fast. Some cost almost nothing. Some use materials you already have. One of them will likely become the only method you ever need. Each one is grounded in the same principle Sven Halvorsen lives by in that study in Bergen. Warmth is not broadcast. It is aimed. Here's exactly how this is going to work. Number 1 on the list is the Swedish candle reflector warm-up. And before you skip past it because it involves a tea light candle, stay with this. Because what looks like a decorative choice is actually a precision thermal tool that Danish energy-saving guides have documented for decades. The scene is familiar to anyone who has ever lived through a sudden cold snap in Northern Europe. The temperature drops overnight. The room is cold when you wake up. Not uncomfortable cold. Genuinely, breath visible, fingers stiff, cold. You can see the faint cloud of your own exhale hanging in the air for a half second before it disappears. Your fingertips are stiff before you've touched anything. The heating system is running technically, but it will take the better part of half an hour before you feel it. You need warmth now, not in 20 minutes. This is the moment the candle reflector earns its place. The materials required cost under €5 in total. 1 standard tea light candle, a metal baking tray or a sheet of heavy-duty aluminium foil, a fireproof surface to set it on. That is the entire kit. No subscription, no electricity, no installation. Here is the setup step by step. Place the candle on a fireproof surface, a ceramic tile, a stone coaster, a cast iron trivet. Position your metal baking tray or foil sheet directly behind the candle, angled slightly forward so the reflective face points toward the center of the room rather than toward the wall. The angle matters. Too steep and the heat shoots upward. Too flat and it reflects back into the flame itself. Roughly 30 to 45 degrees from vertical is the target. Light the candle. That is the entire procedure. What happens next is physics, not magic. A candle flame left against a wall loses a significant portion of its radiant heat to the wall behind it. The wall absorbs warmth and gives almost none of it back. The reflective metal surface does the opposite. It redirects that radiant warmth inward, pushing it toward the zone where you are sitting rather than letting it bleed away behind the heat source. You can feel the difference with your palm held open in front of the setup. The warmth is directional, focused, aimed. Hold your hand 6 inches to the left of the flame and you feel almost nothing. Hold it directly in the path of the reflected beam, and the warmth is immediate and specific, like a narrow spotlight of heat landing on your skin. The sensation is not subtle. It is the difference between standing outside the circle and standing inside it. Within 90 to 120 seconds, the focused zone around the candle registers a measurable temperature rise. Not a dramatic one, not whole room heating, but a real body-perceivable shift in the immediate area, the kind that takes the edge off, that makes the chair you're sitting in feel less like a block of ice and more like somewhere a person could actually settle. Your shoulders drop, your jaw unclenches. The cold stops feeling like an opponent. The effect multiplies sharply when you add one more element. Pull your thermal curtains closed before you light the candle. Floor to ceiling, fully closed. What the reflector does is direct warmth inward. What the curtains do is prevent that warmth from escaping through the glass. Cold glass is a heat sink. A single glazed window on a winter night pulls warmth out of a room the way a drain pulls water, silently, continuously, without pause. The curtains interrupt that process. The two together create a sealed thermal envelope around your zone. The temperature inside that envelope rises measurably within 2 minutes, documented consistently across Nordic cold snap protocols. Ingrid Bergstrom's consultancy work notes this combination specifically, the reflector and the curtain, as a paired system, rather than two separate interventions. The candle alone is useful. The candle with a reflector is better. The candle with a reflector inside closed thermal curtains is a different category of result entirely. A single tea light, a baking tray from your kitchen drawer, curtains you probably already own, under €5, under 2 minutes, a focused zone that is genuinely, measurably warmer. If that one surprised you, the next one is bigger. The cold snap that catches most people out isn't the temperature on the thermometer. It's the cold air moving silently along the floor, the draft you can't see but can absolutely feel against your ankles, the invisible heat thief that undermines every other method on this list before it even gets started. That's one handled. On to the next one. Coming in at number 2, the Norwegian draft stopper seal. The room is cold in a specific way, not uniformly cold. Cold at the floor, cold around your ankles, cold in the band of air that runs from the door base to the far wall like a slow, invisible river. You have a heat source running, you have the candle reflector going, and yet the warmth keeps getting undermined. Something is pulling it apart before it can settle. That something is cold air infiltration. And in Nordic homes during sudden cold snaps, it is identified as the primary heat thief. Not the windows, not the ceiling, not the walls. The gap at the base of the door. Here is why it matters more than most people expect. Cold air is dense. It moves low. It pours through the gap at the base of an exterior-facing door and travels along the floor, displacing the warmer air that has settled there, and it does this continuously as long as the gap is open. Any heat source in the room is fighting this current. The candle reflector is warming a zone that the floor draft is simultaneously cooling. You are working against yourself. The traditional Norwegian fix requires no tools, no adhesive, no installation. A length of tightly rolled sheep's wool, dense, natural, slightly compressed, pressed firmly against the base of the door. That is it. The wool conforms to the uneven gap between the door and the floor. It blocks the air current. It does not shift when the door is closed, because its own weight holds it in place, and because wool compresses slightly under pressure, it fills the irregular surface of the threshold, rather than bridging over it the way a rigid foam strip does. That's not a typo, by the way. Wool, not a foam strip from a hardware shop, not a purpose-made draft excluder from a home goods catalog. Wool. Because wool has been the answer in Norwegian and Swedish households for centuries, kept in a basket near every exterior-facing door, ready to be deployed the moment the temperature drops. You press it into place with your foot, feel it settle and compress against the threshold with a faint, dense resistance, and the cold current at floor level stops within seconds. The difference is physical and immediate. You can feel the stillness return to the air near your feet almost before you've straightened back up. The reason wool works is not sentimental. It is structural. Wool fibers trap air within their natural crimp. That trapped air becomes an insulating layer. The rolled bundle does not just block the gap, it insulates it, preventing cold from conducting through the material itself. A foam strip blocks the gap. Wool blocks the gap and insulates it. The difference in performance is immediate and physical. Run your hand along the base of the door, before and after, and the change is unmistakable. Norwegian and Swedish households document this practice in domestic traditions guides going back generations. The cost is near zero if wool scraps are already on hand, which, in many Nordic homes, they are. Even if you are sourcing wool specifically for this purpose, a usable quantity costs very little and lasts for years with no maintenance. The effect in the room is immediate. The cold floor-level current stops. The warmth generated by your heat source, whatever it is, stops being undermined from below. The zone holds its temperature instead of bleeding it away through the floor. Ingrid Bergstrom's documented protocols list the draft seal as a prerequisite for any other method, not an optional addition. You seal the gap first, then you build the zone, and that's not even the costly one. This next one is. The best one here is near the end, and it's worth the wait. The combination of a sealed door gap and an active reflector creates a compound effect that neither achieves alone. The reflector builds warmth. The wool seal holds it. 2 interventions, both under €5, both deployable in under 2 minutes, working together as a system rather than in isolation. But this next one takes it even further. At number 3, the Scandinavian floor fan circulation trick. The room has a candle reflector running. The door gap is sealed. The warmth is building. And yet there is still something wrong. The top half of the room is noticeably warmer than where you are sitting. You can almost feel the temperature gradient, warmer above your head, cooler at shoulder height, cold at your feet. The heat is in the room. It is just not where you need it. This is the classic stratification problem. Warm air rises. It always does. In a room with any ceiling height at all, and Nordic homes, particularly older ones, often have generous ceiling heights, warm air collects in a band near the top of the room where no one is sitting. The floor level stays cold. The occupied zone stays cold. The heat is technically present, but practically useless. There's one on this list almost nobody knows about, and this is it. Not because the fan trick is obscure, it isn't once you've seen it, but because the instinct to use a fan when you are cold runs directly against human intuition. Fans are for cooling. Everyone knows that. Except in Nordic heating practice, a fan positioned correctly does the opposite. Here is the setup. Take any small household fan, a desk fan, a compact box fan, anything with a low speed setting. Place it on the floor, facing inward toward the room, rather than toward a wall. Angle it slightly upward, not directly at the ceiling, but at a gentle upward angle toward the center of the room. Set it to the lowest speed available. Turn it on. What happens is a loop. The fan gently pushes cold floor-level air upward and inward. That upward movement displaces the warm air sitting near the ceiling, which has nowhere to go but down. The warm air descends along the walls and returns to the floor level, where it is pushed upward again. A slow, continuous circulation loop forms within the room, and within 90 to 120 seconds, the temperature at floor level begins to equalize with the temperature near the ceiling. You feel it first at your ankles, a faint, almost surprising softness in the air where there was only cold before. Then at your knees. Then across your lap. A gradual, steady rise that costs almost nothing to run. And somehow it gets worse for anyone still relying on whole room heating systems without this step, because without circulation, a significant portion of the heat generated in any room is simply sitting above head height, doing nothing. Norwegian heating studies confirm that uniform temperature distribution is achievable within 90 to 120 seconds using this method. The heat was already there. The fan just put it where you needed it. The critical detail is the speed setting. High speed is wrong. High speed creates a wind chill effect that makes the room feel colder, not warmer. Low speed is the only setting that works. Gentle circulation, not a breeze, not a draft. A slow, patient loop that redistributes what is already in the room. This method works with any heat source. It amplifies the candle reflector. It amplifies a wood stove. It even amplifies body heat in a small, sealed space. You are not adding warmth. You are redistributing it, moving it from where it accumulates uselessly to where it is actually needed. 3 methods, each one under 2 minutes, each one under €5 or already in your home. Each one targeting a different layer of the same problem, generating warmth, holding warmth, and distributing warmth. Together, they are a system, and the system works. That one was simple. The next one saves you even more. The reindeer hide and wool textile layer. Think back to that image of Sven Halvorsen in his Bergen study, the candle burning, the room warm despite the cold outside, the wool draped over every surface. The wool was not decorative. It was load-bearing warmth. Reindeer hide rugs have been used across Sami and Norwegian households for centuries, and the reason is structural. The hollow hair shaft of reindeer hide, each strand literally hollow, like a tiny tube, traps air inside itself and reflects body heat back toward its source. Lay one over a cold stone floor, and the floor stops stealing heat from the room. Press the flat of your hand against bare stone and you feel the cold pulling at your skin within seconds. A slow, insistent draw that doesn't announce itself, but never stops. Press it against the surface of a reindeer hide laid over that same stone, and the sensation is entirely different, neutral, still, no draw at all. The stone beneath it stays cold. The surface above it does not. The hide is not warming the floor. It is simply refusing to let the floor win. Drape wool throws over chairs and sofas, and the furniture stops absorbing warmth from your body the moment you sit down. Cold wood, cold upholstery, cold leather. Every surface you press your body against is pulling heat away from you silently and continuously. The wool interrupts that transfer. The perceived temperature rises by 2 to 3 degrees Celsius instantly, with no active heat source required at all. Zero running cost. No chemicals. Materials that last decades with basic care. The room did not change. The surfaces did. That is the whole secret. Warmth was never missing from the room. It was being quietly taken away, one cold surface at a time, and the Nordic answer was simply to stop letting that happen. The opening question, except now you know exactly how to answer it. Watch the next video on Nordic home efficiency to keep that warmth locked in all winter.